We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
We opened this series talking about the big things Spokane has done in its history, like our World's Fair, Bloomsday, Hoop Fest, Gonzaga basketball, our downtown reinventing itself time and again. Houston is home to big things too, like, say, putting a human being on the moon. This is Texas, after all. Go big or go home. It's also one of the most welcoming places in the country, with 20% of their population foreign-born. They boast the largest Nigerian and second largest Vietnamese populations in America, and they welcome their neighbors in times of need, like over 200,000 of them during Hurricane Katrina. And they're survivors. In each of the last 7 years, they've endured 7 natural disasters, including Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Those are the times that test your grit as a community, and they also have a way of bringing people together. As it turns out, cooperation may be the most important element of Houston's DNA, and it's the key ingredient to their many remarkable successes, including managing their homeless population over 2.5 times better than any city in America over the last 10 years. And Houston isn't satisfied. They plan to reduce the amount of people experiencing homelessness by another 50% over the next 5 years, and also send a man or woman to Mars. Is it possible to provide housing and help to the people who are experiencing homelessness and also reclaim the streets, parks, and downtown we love so much? Houston's done it. Why can't we? As we've documented throughout this series, Spokane's population of those experiencing homelessness is the highest in its history and putting a strain on government, business, and neighborhoods alike. But Spokane isn't alone. In fact, over the last 10 years, the rise in Spokane's homeless point-in-time count, as required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, looks eerily similar to many cities in America and what Houston's looked like in 2012. But over the last 10 years, as Spokane's HUD point-in-time homeless count has increased an astounding 64%, Houston's point-in-time homeless count has decreased 63%. To get the complete story, you have to start when things were near rock bottom for Houston. 2012. Mark Eichenbaum is the Special Assistant to the Mayor for Homeless Initiatives for the City of Houston. He's been with the city for 12 years and remembers 2012 well, then serving in the administration of 3-term Mayor Anise Parker. Every graph for homelessness across the country that I've been seeing looks like this. You guys, your lowest per capita homeless population in the nation of any major city?
Didn't used to always be like that. We used to have the 6th largest population of individuals experiencing homelessness in the country.
You're in trouble with HUD.
You're right. We were named a priority community by HUD, which is not a good designation.
Right.
We had, on any given night, over 8,500 individuals sleeping on our streets and in our shelters.
What's that number today?
Now it's around 3,000.
Far less than half.
Far less than half. Not only do we have to do big things to get there, we have to continue to keep the momentum, or else we will regress. I think there's tens of thousands of people throughout our city, throughout our state and country that are experiencing housing instability every day. And those individuals are falling into homelessness. And we have to get more folks out of homelessness than become homeless to get a net reduction. And that's the big challenge that Houston struggled with, and we still struggle with it today. And it's what every other city in the country deals with.
And because there's so many perceptions around homelessness, the perception possibly is Houston's doing a good job with homelessness, and that word gets out, and suddenly people are moving from outside the area into Houston.
That was a concern before we even started our coordinated collaborative system. Folks said, you're going to house people with services and with no strings attached. People are going to flood into Houston. And the reality is it's just not true. And the data shows the vast majority of folks are from Southeast Texas that are experiencing homelessness in Houston. And the percentage has not changed over time.
So you're dealing with your own population.
We're dealing with our own population. When you look at permanent supportive housing itself, it's about 80% success rate nationwide. And we're right there at 90%. I think when we started, there was preconceptions. Folks would say, we drive by them, we see them. There's no way we can house them. There's no way they would stay housed. They need to be fixed. They need to be reformed. The data shows it's not true. That these folks, we are moving folks who have been living on the streets for years, living in encampments for years, right into housing. The vast majority of them are staying stably housed for the long term.
Unlike many cities, including Spokane, coordinating this remarkable effort to reduce homelessness is led not by the city of Houston or surrounding counties, but by an independent, nonprofit lead agency called the Coalition for Homelessness. Mike Nichols is its CEO, and Jessica Preheim is the Coalition's Vice President for Strategic Planning and Public Affairs. I mean, you really started out in kind of a rough place where HUD had you on a not good list, but that was kind of the beginning of tremendous change towards the good.
Yeah, I mean, it was so bad that at one point we sat down with the VA and the Housing Authority and we just mapped out how many steps it took for someone to get into housing, and it was 76 steps, and it took us on average over a year.
Wow.
To get someone into housing. So that was like our starting point. But
how many people have been housed, say during this magic 10-year period that we keep hearing about? How many people have you housed about, do you suppose?
24,000?
Over 24,000 formerly homeless people are in supportive housing. I mean, we know our goal is to house people.
Right.
We know our vision is that everyone will have a safe place to call home. We have a good organizational process. And that's where you have a nonprofit as the lead agency that brings together the city, the county, philanthropy, housing authority, businesses into driving one direction, again, solving.
That's the coalition that you guys
the coalition run. Where coalition is the lead agency for the continuum of care, and which is its 3-county continuum of care.
So what is the continuum of care, or COC, and why does it matter to places like Houston and Spokane? The Department of Housing and Urban Development provides federal dollars and assistance to over 400 COCs, including Spokane, throughout the country every year. Houston's COC, which they call the Way Home, combines the city of Houston and surrounding counties, community foundations, businesses, and other community stakeholders, public housing authorities, veterans groups, and over 100 nonprofit service providers.
But 2011, many big decisions were made, but one of the most important was that we said that we're going to have a coordinated access into housing. And that means that when a person is experiencing homelessness and they enter the system, it doesn't matter what door they go through, whether it comes through the city, the county, Star of Hope, Search, it doesn't matter. The choice will be they'll get housing based on their vulnerability. Half the people who were involved in 2011 said, well, we don't need to do that. We want to put housing on who's going to be most successful. But thanks to philanthropy, the mayor, the city, and they got together and they said, no, we're going to focus on those who are most vulnerable and put them in housing first. And of course, the amazing part is the success rate of over 85% means it was a really good decision.
Perhaps no single person has made as significant an impact on reducing homelessness in Houston over the last decade as their former 3-term mayor, Anise Parker.
What in your background, allowed you to hit the ground running like that and create that kind of collaboration?
I don't know if it was anything in my background, but it was very much my willingness to expend a lot of political capital on something that would make a difference. Political capital is to spend on big, hard things. But I also spent 20 years in the oil industry doing project economics, and it all ultimately comes down to the bottom line. And the way we deal with homelessness across the country is inefficient, ineffective, and largely a huge waste of resources. And so I wanted to try to find a better way.
Anise Parker in many ways is an original in a city of independent doers. The first openly lesbian mayor of a major American city, Mayor Parker was an analyst in the oil and gas industry for over 20 years and former comptroller for the city of Houston. She also had a vested personal interest in the issue of homelessness, having adopted, along with her wife, Kathy Hubbard, 3 daughters, and also a teenage son who was living on the streets. Mayor Parker effectively used her strong mayor office to enforce strict boundaries.
We've had for decades an ordinance that says you can't block the sidewalk, you can't pitch a tent, you can't sleep on a sidewalk. Houston is defined by 8 small rivers that run west to east, and people will camp along those little rivers, but they are, off the sidewalk and generally allow commerce to continue, and we expect that. When I travel to other cities, I'm shocked that to see essentially permanent tent cities on sidewalks.
We've got that.
Would not happen in Houston.
So that's back to that tough love a little bit, and you would stand behind that.
I absolutely would stand behind that. If you're in a wheelchair and you're going down that street and there's a tent city in front of you, what do? If you're pushing a baby stroller, they don't have a higher right to access that sidewalk than every other citizen.
A little bit of tough love at the front end, but we hear a lot about housing first, which obviously is an extremely humanitarian.
We did housing
approach.
first. Most definitely. I had a unique set of circumstances happen that prompted me to say, okay, I'm going to tackle homelessness. The heads of the Houston Housing Authority, Harris County Housing Authority, Houston Housing Department, Harris County Housing Department, and the head of the Houston Health Department and the Coalition for the Homeless all changed. So I had new people. So I didn't have anybody that was, this is the way we've always done it and this is mine.
Right, a willingness to change.
People inside City Hall weren't the only ones that had to develop a willingness to change. It extended to every key group affected by homelessness in Houston, especially the nonprofit service providers working every day to provide help to unhoused people on the street. One of those key people is Julie Falcon, Chief Advancement Officer at the Beacon, a nonprofit organization formed by the members of the Episcopal Diocese of Houston that serves the Houston homeless community through daily services, meals, civil legal aid, counseling and mentoring, and most importantly, access to housing. Julie, too, remembers a time when the system was much more inefficient than the one that they have today.
Individuals that are experiencing homelessness would be going to one agency and saying, I need a place to stay, and that case manager would get on the phone and start calling to all the different agencies to find out where they could stay, and then that individual might move on to another agency, and that case manager's getting on the phone and making the same phone call to find out where this
didn't have the centralized data, but now you're sharing all that.
Now we're sharing all that, so we're able to see that this person is being supported by this agency at this step in the process.
So before everybody was working together, they're all doing their own thing. Almost a lot of chaos there.
Yes.
Another longtime agency doing homeless services work to get people off the streets and back on their feet is Search. I sat down with its president and CEO, Tao Costas, and Bob Urey, who served for over 30 years as the CEO of Central Houston, the city's downtown business association. They both recall, all too well, that frustrating time just over a decade ago.
We had like 6, 7 different services that we provided, from day shelter to childcare, adult education, employment, you name it, we had it. And it was costing us more than we could really manage. We were too diversified and really not clearly effective in any particular one. And so that's the problem with any business if you try to do too much. And so that's the weakness of our mission, is we had to then get focused on who are we here for and what are we intentionally needing to achieve. And so when we clarified that for ourselves, it made so much sense to be partner with and be the best friends of the housing provider rather than us having to be the housing provider too. So now we do case management. We are the ones that are the skilled staff members who are going out hand in hand working with the individuals that most of us don't quite know what to do and how to work with them. But our staff, they do. And they will stick with them, and we will stick with them.
And other agencies are picking up some of the work you
the other pieces, exactly.
It's all getting done.
The Beacons doing a beautiful job of the front end.
Yes.
We're going on the back end.
Right.
And partners like the private sector that Bob has brought in, we're able to get the financial support to complement some of the public support. And so it just all gets woven in together really well.
Over the last decade, Houston has embraced the Housing First model, a program required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to move people experiencing homelessness directly into housing, not shelters, with few requirements, like being drug-free, employed, or religiously affiliated. Even a formerly reluctant business community has fully embraced this successful business strategy.
You can take most any downtown in this country for sure, and when you really look at list of issues that are right front and center and the communities deal with, homelessness is up there. I feel like here it really goes back actually quite a few decades, and we were beginning to work on solutions. My first sort of involvement really came more through housing. A few of our nonprofit plus other nonprofits, including Search, sort of got together and said, let's build a single room occupancy SRO housing, and we took on a old sort of tenement hotel in downtown, and it only took us 5 years to get it open and built. Very proud of it, actually, that we were able to get it done. But we did it largely, one, to begin to employ federal grant money, because Houston did not have a long history of doing that.
Right.
And secondly, because we realized we did need homes for people. We needed actual shelter for them. And I think what was great about it is that it also became kind of a training ground for all of us involved, because we were learning on the job in terms of kind of getting this off and going. And
how did you make the business case for that to your fellow business people, Bob? I mean, early on, it must have been a little bit of an exercise.
This is a city full of developers, so you don't have any problem really getting anybody to understand what you do when you want to develop something. You know, they all get it. But I also think it was one of those things where we also knew we needed to begin to make tangible progress, and so this was a way to kind of get started and get moving on this as we go forward. And so really, we didn't have a difficult time with it. And I remember, although we had a lot of federal grant money in it, we didn't have too hard a time raising other money that we needed to complete the project.
Right.
Bob's been such an amazing champion of this issue of homelessness. You know, I think we can recognize from a city that's this big that you're going to have a lot of people who are homeless and poor around the central parts. And so it's inevitable. But you also want to do it in a humane and thoughtful way. And so I think it's been great to have a partner on the business side where we've been to really stay on course in a meaningful way.
Early in her first term, Mayor Parker had a unique opportunity come her way, a challenge by the Obama administration to house 100 veterans in 100 days. At that point, according to the New York Times, homeless veterans in Houston had to wait 720 days and manage their way through 76 bureaucratic steps to get from the street into permanent housing with wraparound support services. Today, that wait is only 32 days to get to housing and help.
So we said, okay, we'll house 100 homeless veterans in 100 days. And it gave me an excuse to convene all the various agencies. And I wasn't saying to them, oh, you're doing a terrible job. I was saying to them, here's an opportunity to show your patriotism, and we'll all work together to do the right thing for veterans. So we had dozens of agencies around the table, and I could say, you know, put your cards on the table. Let's see, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Everybody coming together, you know, kumbaya, hold hands.
Yeah, that's a good moment.
And we housed 101 homeless veterans in 100 days. And then we said, okay, let's do it again. And by the time you do it 3 times...
You did it 3 times.
We did it 3 times. By the time you do it 3 times, you have a new paradigm.
Right.
But it gave me the opportunity to really see the various agencies in action, which ones could step up, what their resources were. You know, we had a lot of great organizations, but they're all operating in parallel. Mm-hmm. And they all had their own little niche that they wanted to stay in. But if you're always moving in parallel, you're not converging on the problem. The resources that were available through these organizations were not the resources that we needed. And so we found out a lot about the population that we had and what they needed. Then we went and looked at the agencies and we asked them for what is your target population? How many beds do you have? What are the resources that you have available? And some of them were like, I don't have to tell you. And this is where, if you want to make an omelet, you have to break eggs. And I said that if you're privately funded, I can't do anything about that. But if you get government dollars in any way, you will cooperate, because I will make sure that you don't get any more government
Back
dollars.
to that leadership. You have to do that.
I had to make people unhappy.
I think our natural tendency is to react to and reduce the suffering. And so we wanted to give people, the showers and the laundry and the food and the connection to the human being. And we learned over the years that while that is very much needed and meaningful, we needed to do more and differently in order to really end the suffering completely. And that to end homelessness, we need to have people in homes, and we need to wrap them with the care and the support that they need that's taken them into such a different place in this life. And so that's the focus that our community has made.
It was having really honest, intentional, and public conversations. I think we really kind of removed, the behind the scenes. And I would say it really started with the veteran work. It was almost 2 years. We met every single week with an entire room of executives, from the head of the VA to the housing authorities to the COC, our nonprofits. And we just said, we made public and audacious goals, and then we said, how do we have to pivot as a community to meet those goals? And let's just be transparent about it, because you can take a larger risk if you do it as a group. I mean, it's collective. The more people that say, okay, I'm going to jump in the deep end, but I'm doing it with 20 other people and 20 other agencies, then you can't plan yourself into nothingness. And I think that's where Houston says, we might not have a polished product right now, but we're going to try it, and we're going to adjust, and we're going to acknowledge that it's very rare we get it right the first time. When we're still going to try, because you only learn by doing.
As much safety as there was in numbers, the numbers that shifted everyone's attention was the incredible cost of not addressing the situation. It was costing Houston hundreds of millions of dollars with very little results in helping people out of homelessness.
It's all about creating a method to the madness. And back before we started this, everybody was doing their own thing, their own way, with their own strategies, their own goals, their own interventions.
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of great stuff and well-meaning stuff. But we were working against each other. We were going in opposite directions. And what we realized is that with limited resources and a huge need, we needed to get smarter. So how can we take those same resources, the same work that's being done out there, but get smarter about it? And we're doing that through collaborating. And
where did that leadership come from? Obviously this makes a lot of sense, but the leadership, somehow you got everybody to start talking about this. How did that happen?
So when we started, the mayor at the time, Mayor Anise Parker, said, we're spending millions of dollars.
One of the things I discovered when we did our research was we were spending more than $100 million a year on the chronically homeless in downtown Houston. 10% getting 50% of the services.
Yeah.
The vast majority of that money was going to emergency care.
There's this huge cost of not doing anything, and part of it's just, there's an annual cost with the hospitals and all the public services, but do you have a sense of what those dollars are, maybe on an individual basis of just doing nothing?
Yes, in fact, the county studied this and showed that it costs $96,000 per person per year to leave them out on the street, and that's costing the agencies as well as the criminal justice system and the healthcare system.
Now, what's the cost of housing with all the services?
Housing with all the services, about $18,000. That's
you don't
rent.
have to be real great with
exactly. Exactly, and that's rent and healthcare, wrap around support. So it just makes sense. It really does, and it makes sense for us agencies who've been spinning our wheels. I mean, really, we had been just reacting to survival needs versus really getting traction. And so we've each had to adjust along the way and really get clear about our unique contribution to this system and how are we going to complement each other rather than just a little bit at a time by everybody. It doesn't go anywhere.
I think the downtown community has sort of learned like the rest of us. And the logic here is pretty simple. One, it's a lot cheaper to have somebody housed than it is to have them on the street. Two, it's really a permanent solution as opposed to about anything else we would do is clearly not. There is a strong consensus about the way home and the direction of what we're doing collectively here with this. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. And quite frankly, on the side of the downtown district and central Houston, these organizations, downtown organizations, I think there has been a remarkable generosity towards this effort, meaning there is a real sense of this is something that we should do, and it is important.
You know, we're spending millions of dollars the same way every single year, and we're expecting different results. That's ludicrous.
Einstein's definition of insanity.
You're exactly right.
The inefficient use of dollars was another big hurdle that was overcome by collaboration from the city and surrounding counties. It also became clear to everyone that one centralized lead agency was needed to streamline the entire homeless response system.
And so we have an independent lead agency here that works on creating the plan and coordinates the actual investments of dollars. All the funding coming from the private sector, the funding coming from the city, the funding coming from the county, the funding coming from the federal government to the continuum of care. It is all aligned together on one plan through one agency, kind of as the air traffic controller.
Right.
Not just on the funding, but also on the services and the efforts being done at the end of the day. Every neighborhood in Houston has individuals experiencing homelessness. Every neighborhood needs to be a part of the solution. It's about the public and private partnerships coming together. It's about having the philanthropic and the ecumenical sectors coming together. So Mayor Parker did this big challenge. She said, we need to be smarter. We need to do it differently. And we don't have the time nor money to do it. So we said, let's focus on that. Based on that, that's when the rest of the community came around. While the mayor is a huge leader, and it can't be done without the mayor, it's not the mayor's plan. It's a community plan. Here we have one plan that the county's part of, the city's part of, the private sector's part of, the homeless response system's part of, that one unified plan. And one of the biggest things was actually the city and county coming together. Today, the city and county are step by step equally investing dollars into the issue with equal ownership. And I think folks have realized, you can't make homelessness your third most important issue, your fourth most important issue. You can't make it, the county can't say, hey, it's not our issue because we're worried about the unincorporated areas of the county. Right. The reality is, you can only move that needle when everybody comes around and says, we are going to make this a priority issue and we're going to work together.
Next time on Housing and Help, we'll travel back to Houston. They'll share the steps we can take to address homelessness in Spokane.
You know, spend time listening and learning from one another, deciding on how each entity can be part of the solution versus pointing fingers, I think, or trying to maintain so much of the work that you do in a silo. You're going to be so much stronger if you work together.
Act smart, act quickly. Don't waste any more time. Every single day, individuals are becoming homeless in Spokane. We cannot sit there and spend months and years devising plans and relationship building. You gotta act now. And part of it is building the ship while it's sailing.
Over 25,000 people who were formerly homeless have been placed in supportive housing over the last since 2011.
Supportive housing, long term. How many housed right now?
At this moment, there are more than 8,500 individuals who are in supportive housing.
Jessica, if somebody's in temporary housing, do you consider that housed?
No, if you're in emergency shelter or you're transitional housing, we count you as homeless.
We'll also meet Jerry, homeless for over a year after serving 27 years for armed robbery. Jerry found his way to the Beacon. He's now housed, has a job, health care, and continues to give back by volunteering at the Beacon. What would you have somebody like me want to know about what it's like to be homeless?
Cold outside, raining, flooding. You know, want something to eat, can't go to a restaurant and order you a cheeseburger and a Coke, something like that. So, you know, that's something to look at, man. Think about others that's going through homelessness, man. And try to reach out and help somebody, like I say, with your two hands.
That's next time on Housing and Help, a homeless solution series. Watch the full interviews from this and every episode at housingandhelp.org. And please like, subscribe, and share on social media.